Nigeria has joined 10 other African nations on the UK's coronavirus red list that requires travelers who are British or Irish nationals who wish to enter to quarantine for 10 days after they arrive in the UK, a move which isn't cheap. It comes with a hotel bill of around $3,000. Now, that's if you got a British or an Irish passport. If you don't, you can't come. The British government says the restrictions are necessary because Nigeria is now only second to South Africa in terms of linked cases to Omicron COVID mutations. But as you may know, there have been many people from the World Health Organization to scientists who are saying that the travel restrictions are an overreaction and it's too late because Omicron is already out there.
A decision by the British government to put Nigeria on the red list just because of less than 2,000 cases of Omicron, which, by the way, did not originate in Nigeria, is unjust, unfair, punitive, indefensible, and discriminatory. The decision is also not driven by science or common sense. The fact that travel ban, the type that has been slammed on some African countries, is a knee-jerk reaction that can only be detrimental to our quest to most conclusively tackle the pandemic. Instead of these reflex responses that are driven by fear and prejudice rather than science, why can't the world take a serious look at the issue of access to vaccine and ensure that it is based on the principles grounded in the right of every human being to enjoy the highest attainable standard of health without discrimination on the basis of race, religion, political belief, economic, or any other social condition.
The placement of Nigeria and other African countries on the United Kingdom's travel ban list continues to generate outrage, as many European countries that had the Omicron variant of COVID-19 were deliberately left out of the UK ban. A list of the affected countries shows that Portugal, Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, and France have high levels of Omicron variant, but are left untouched by the UK government with no restrictions. The UK
actually listen to
The UK's inclusion of Nigeria on the travel red list has been described as travel appetite by the Nigerian High Commissioner to the UK, Sharafa Ishola.
I actually listened to the Health Secretary make the statement, and the statement he made was the fact that about 221 Omicron cases were traced to travel from Nigeria. To me, that's not any scientific evidence. This COVID is being managed by the World Health Organization because it's a pandemic. We are not dealing with an endemic that is peculiar to particular countries. It's a global thing. And I must say that during the first wave and the second wave, in spite of the deaths all over the world, Nigeria was able to manage COVID to the extent that for a country of 200 million population, and we only had over 200 cases and deaths of about 3,000. So, the NCDC was that is Nigeria, the disease control. Nigeria Center for Disease Control actually managed the situation to the extent that we got commendation from the UN in the way the COVID first variant and the second variant were managed by Nigeria. So it's been something that all Nigerians are quite enraged. If we didn't come on the red list during the first and second wave, why should we come on account of three Omicron variant tested in Nigeria. We only have three people, and these 3 people are travelers to Nigeria. So this is not acceptable, and that's why we've been making it very clear that we align with the position of the Secretary General that this is travel apartheid, because there was no basis of it.
Sundu, your thoughts on this?
Well, we've had quite a robust response there from the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, to what I can only describe as a completely fatuous policy from the United Kingdom. But he stopped short of, announcing any banning of British Airways or Virgin, as some people have called for. But he was right on all points as far as I'm concerned. And there's been a lot of talk about racism, yes, but I like the way he put it, which is similar to how I feel. I couch it more as prejudice, because not all prejudice is racial. And at the end of the day, where Africa is concerned, I recall there was a day you and I had this conversation, Dr. Abati, about just the cliches about Africa, the way the Western media portrays Africa and all the cliches they hold so dear. You have to have flies swarming around pot-bellied children. You must have bare-breasted savages, and it's this hotbed of disease and poverty, and that is really that is what we see playing out here.
Donate 3
so
pounds.
It's really, and it's also, yes, and it's really not about black in sense of the color of skin. It's also about green, money, because Africa is always in this position of waiting for the benevolence of the West. It's aid in loans and now vaccines. So this is why we have been treated in this fashion. But that is not to say that all prejudice is racial. So there's a slight distinction there. But I like the way he told them exactly how ridiculous that policy is. I was listening to Professor Neil Ferguson, one of the members of SAGE, the UK Government Scientific Advisory, saying that Omicron cases are going to double in the UK every 3 days. They have 336 cases already. So what exactly is this point of shutting the barn door after the horse has galloped across the country and shutting out Africa to really stress the disdain that is felt for Africa? And it is pointless, it is unfair, it is utterly ridiculous, and should be condemned as roundly as we have seen it be condemned. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the next thing the UK should do is apologize and lift this ban, because he made an excellent point. He made this example of him and his cousin in the same home, and because the person has a red passport, he can come in. It's the British passport holders, and obviously if you're a Nigerian but you have a residency, you can come in, and then you can quarantine under really onerous conditions. It's quite a steep amount of money, like you said, almost $3,000. So that in itself is a deterrent. You will know that, okay, we're not welcome here. I think that would have been the better approach all across board. So travelers to the UK, no matter whether you're a tourist or a resident or a citizen, you will know this is the condition. If your trip is that important, you can do it. But to single certain people out and not others, it's just, fatuous, ridiculous, really.
Dr. Abati?
Well, in the last 24 hours, since we first discussed this subject, there have been developments, and those developments are interesting on both sides of the spectrum. From the Nigerian side, it was good to see the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, come forward to condemn the step that has been taken against Nigeria by the United Kingdom, to which putting Nigeria on the red list on the basis of the 3 reported cases of Omicron in Nigeria and allegations or reports from France and Canada that persons who traveled through Nigeria, have been spotted with the Omicron variant. I think we will all agree with the minister that what has been done does not follow the science. It's indefensible, it's unjust, and it was also done in a very shabby manner. The Nigerian authorities were given 30 minutes notice for a country that shares strong trade relations with Britain and that has very strong historic and cultural ties with Britain. I think it's a great insult, big insult for the Nigerian people to be treated in such a shabby manner. The Nigerian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, to the Court of St. James, also yesterday did the media rounds, the international media, from BBC to Arise News, in which he echoed the statement by Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, and also pointed out that, in fact, there were persons, who had come to Nigeria and had returned to the UK, who are, resident in the UK. Okay, what is the difference if they're coming from the same destination? But I think that the Nigerian government should go a few steps further. It's not enough to do the media rounds or to address the press. I think the Nigerian government should go ahead and summon the British High Commissioner in Nigeria to put across our protest formally through the diplomatic channel and to put it on record that this is unacceptable to us. That would be raising the level of the protest. Second, there are many of us who have recommended reciprocal action. And, look, we talk about equality of states in international law, in international relations. But you see, some states force the issue. They try to show that some animals in the international kingdom are more superior to the other. But as a sovereign state, you also have the right to engage in reciprocity, which is the language that bullies within the international arena understand. And some of the recommendations have been that Nigeria should also go ahead and put Britain on a red list. Since the protocols that Alhaji Lai Mohammed articulated yesterday, do not seem to be adequate for Britain. Then we place a ban on all travels from the United Kingdom, with the exception of Nigerians who are carrying Nigerian passports. And we ban travels by British Airways to Nigeria and also Virgin Atlantic to Nigeria. Now let us see if the British authorities will not act swiftly to take a second look. The third part of it is the hypocrisy, the discriminatory nature of the red list that has been placed on Nigeria. As of Sunday, Sajid Javid, the health secretary, reported that on Sunday alone, there were 86 new cases of Omicron in the United Kingdom. As of yesterday, that number has increased to 336 in the United Kingdom. And we're told that there's community spread already from region to region within the United Kingdom. So who has more cases of Omicron? Even if we're informed that none of the 336 cases now reported in the United Kingdom has been hospitalized. In other words, so far, science says, the symptoms are mild and moderate and may not necessarily result in hospitalization. So if 3 cases have been reported from Nigeria, there are more cases in the United Kingdom itself. There are more cases in 17 countries in Europe. And yet, the United Kingdom has not banned those 17 countries in Europe from, gaining access to the United Kingdom. So those who are talking about hypocrisy and discrimination and travel appetite, they can find justification in that regard. Now, the other dimension, the other part of the spectrum was that yesterday, the UK mission in Nigeria came up with certain clarifications. One, that students and those who want to work and live in the United States, although visa application has been paused for the
visitors,
for the oi polloi of Nigeria, those persons who fall into that special category can still apply for visa. And you know how that works. These special visa categories, which countries use to mop up the best and the brightest
talent,
persons who can contribute to their own jurisdiction from countries. So they pick and choose the kind of Nigeria, the Nigerians that they want to enter their country. And money is linked to this. It's about profit. People who want to go and study in the UK, if you check the population of foreign students in the United Kingdom, maybe apart from India or maybe China, Nigeria will rank very high on the list. In the US too, we contribute the largest number of students paying international fees, to these foreign countries. You only need to take a flight to the UK in September when students are going back, or during the January window. You see many mothers, I don't know why fathers don't follow their children usually. All the flights will be filled up. So they are interested in that, but they are not interested in the feelings of the average Nigerian. And I think, that this profit-oriented diplomacy, mindset, is something that is deplorable and that is condemnable in the extreme. Now, they also said, previously, the mission had said, well, visas can be given on compassionate grounds, medical grounds, and a window is provided for that. But we have also now been told that if you have done your biometrics at the visa application center, then it means, as Nigerians say, your fees have entered their voicemail.
Yes.
You cannot take it back. But even then, even with a pause in applications, we've now been told that you can apply. But you will pay, keep my passport fees. So you see the United Kingdom, using every method to profit from this. And I think that, look, the matter must be put on record that Nigerians are outraged It's not just talking heads on television that are protesting. Government itself is protesting. Stakeholders within the travel and tourism industry in Nigeria are protesting. And I hope that the United Kingdom will not play deaf and dumb diplomacy in this regard. We'll pay very close attention to the protest that has been registered. Only take away from this is the fact that they say, well, the ban, the pause is temporary. It's subject to review. And we hope that quickly, expeditiously, the United Kingdom will see reason to follow the example of the United States, which has taken a different tack in handling this particular matter. Both for the reasons that this is a knee-jerk reaction, as has been correctly described, and also in the interest of the strong trade and diplomatic relations and the historical and cultural connections between both countries.
For me, when you look at the science strongly, the science doesn't favor the UK. Where you have community spread of Omicron, the UK is even a bigger threat to Nigeria.
Of course.
So based on the science, we'd like to call for a total ban of the UK citizens or people coming from the UK, except, like you said, Dr. But they've got Nigerian passports, to Nigeria, because the UK should not come and populate Nigeria with the Omicron COVID variants. Because,
certainly not.
Yes, because that's what they want to do now with the high number of this virus in the UK that has hit community spread. And like you said, Professor Neil Ferguson was speaking, and he said it multiplies tremendously in a 3-day cycle.
It doubles.
It doubles.
Every 3 days.
So that's to show you that there's community spread in the UK. And if we want to follow the science, like we've always called for in all of this conversation, follow the science, there should be a total ban for the UK coming into this country. Secondly, it just goes to show the massive level of corruption by these so-called people we look up to. It is about us because they know we have the bigger numbers. An average Nigerian student pays nothing less than £13,000
No,
in tuition.
it's more than that.
It's more than that.
Yes.
13
It's
to
about
15,000. 17,000 pounds.
And for some courses, 19,000 to
depending
20,000.
on the school, Dr. Abati. I say an average Nigerian student, because not all of them will go to the A-list schools. There are some schools that will still charge £12,000 that, the average Nigerian student, or £13,000, the average Nigerian student will pay.
Maybe you are talking
But
about Metropolitan.
So just imagine that.
Such an intellectual snob.
So just imagine that. £13,000 coupled with another $3,000. That if you want a Nigerian to come in, and we all know the stories that came out of these hotels, these COVID hotels, how they were linked to Tory donors. So we are seeing the corruption that is going on right here. Thirdly, we are also seeing the lack of respect for us as a people. Zero respect, dehumanization. And this behoves on our leaders that have the chance to change our country and make it better and make it able to compete effectively, but they waste the chance because of their personal interest. Isn't this treatment of Nigeria enough for you to take a new leaf and do well by the people? Because the so-called West that we all run to when we carry out looted funds in this country don't care about us. The so-called West that we go to stash up big monies in their bank accounts don't care about us. So isn't it time for us to change this dynamics? And isn't this time for us to stop this neo-colonialism and neo-imperialism that is happening again? It is obvious that our leaders should take a leaf from what Professor Tomori stated yesterday in his speech. He broke down crying. And he told the glowing tales of how he lived in a utopian Nigeria. He called it the UN. How a child that was the 39th child in his family, albeit from a father that was a farmer, had a chance at education because of the policy of Obafemi Awolowo, free education policy. And then he could go through the educational rung up to professorial level. He told the glowing tales of how in this same Nigeria, after leaving Abu in Zaria, 5 days after, he got a job and he started working. But can we say that Nigeria is like that today? In the first place, why are citizens even queuing up to go look for work in the UK? when we have over 68 million hectares of arable land. So while we call out neocolonialism, while we call out new imperialism, we should also look inward at leadership. Are we treating Nigerians right? Darren Acemoglu said in his book, "Why do nations fail? Because their leaders make them fail." Why is Nigeria in this position? The leaders should introspect. It's teaching time saves 9. That's all on News Headline. We take a short break. When we return, we'll have Michael Wilson here in Akeja to give us updates on global business, sport, and activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Moving on now to global business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. So a bit of a bounce back, really, as far as shares are concerned in Asia-Pacific markets. Hong Kong's Hang Seng up about 2%, and Tencent up about 2%. Alibaba 10% after losing a great deal yesterday, as it did. Mainland Chinese stocks a bit subdued, really. Exports not doing very well in China, but imports doing quite well. I think it's a lot to do with the slightly waning strength of the Chinese economy, but mostly to do with the level of the yuan, which is actually quite expensive, and therefore imports are quite cheaper. Over in Australia, the main index there rose about 1%. The Reserve Bank of Australia, as expected, did nothing with interest rates. China's government has said late yesterday, our time, your time as well, that it would cut the amount of cash that banks must hold in reserve. So that's the second time it's done that this year. So Chinese exports growth slows, but imports accelerate, as I said. Saudi Aramco CEO has warned. Now, this is, you would expect him to say this, but he has. He said it at this conference. Warns of social unrest if new investment in fossil fuels ends too quickly. He was speaking at the World Petroleum Congress in Houston, in Texas, and he claimed that transitioning to cleaner fuels too rapidly could prompt uncontrolled inflation and social unrest, and it comes amid pressure on oil and gas companies, obviously, who are trying to shift to renewable power development. As far as the US is concerned, stocks rebounded quite rapidly. Investors assessing the Omicron risk, and people are saying it's less of it around, or less risk around, than there was yesterday. I mean, we'll see about that. Overnight session saw the blue chip yesterday gain, the Dow Jones blue chip gained about 650 points. Futures are relatively level as we speak. The EU is going to be awarded a modest downgrade by the IMF. It's like the IMF is going to cut all its Eurozone forecasts amid fears about inflation and amid fears about Omicron as well, growing supply pressures, high energy prices, and all the rest of it. The fund said in October that it felt the Eurozone would grow by 4.3% in 2022. It's warning now that its next forecast will be modestly revised downwards from that. Meanwhile, Omicron is also adding doubts to whether or not the ECB will continue its commitments to stimulus funding. In other words, if this Omicron variant causes inflation, then it's doubtful that the ECB will continue. It might just shave a little bit off the process of actually getting this stimulus into its various economies, really following the pretty obvious statement from the United States last week that it feels as though their asset buying program is being tapered very, very slightly. As you've been discussing, these new COVID rules come into force, or came into force early this morning. It's thrown, apart from everything else, huge holiday plans into disarray, being criticised more or less by everybody, not least of which the travel industry. And I'm not talking about citizens, talking about industries, because we talk about business in this particular section. And some people are actually considering just not not going anywhere at all for the foreseeable future. Oil finally rebounding as Saudi Arabia boosts prices. It could be to do with that. The market's kind of thinking it's a bit to do with the risk off element of Omicron. There was people saying it's not perhaps as risky as people thought, and gold remains, as it always has done, under pressure. Nobody's really turning to it now, and certainly not with the dollar rising as it has been. That's been your global view. Now, Doctor, you wanted to talk about yesterday. We didn't have time, but you wanted to talk about Evergrande, and I think that's quite important that we do. Would you like to continue to talk about that slightly this morning?
Yeah, okay. I was going to draw attention to the fact that on Friday, Evergrande announced that it will not be able to meet its next deadline, which was yesterday. $82.5 billion required by bondholders. And, they were even asking for up to about 260 billion out of the total of $300 billion. And the authorities in Guangdong had to move in immediately. They invited the chairman of the company, and then also they put together a team that will help with risk control, debt restructuring, and all of that. Although the Central Bank of China and the insurance and banking regulators are saying that, well, they are in a position to contain the emerging damage. And I asked the question, is it not clear that Evergrande is going to collapse? Because it's like management has thrown up his hands in despair. And of course, the stock market value of the company continues to go down. So what do you think of the effort by the Chinese authorities to move in? Is that anything that anybody can rely on?
I think it's a crucial point. What you've just said is absolutely crucial to the continuing existence of Evergrande. I think once the authorities get involved, then it becomes fairly serious. Let's not be in any doubt about how big it is. It's about the company is about a third of the total output, although it doesn't output anything, but in terms of the value of it, a third of the total output of China. It is a huge company, and I think that what you're going to see is, I don't know whether it'll survive in its present form. I don't think it'll collapse, because I don't think the Chinese will allow that to happen. That's been my thought all along. I think what we might see, and again, once the authorities start getting involved, that's a red flag as far as I'm concerned. But what it also means is it may just be that the Chinese allow this sort of managed decline, because I don't really see, if it's going to be supported, how this fits in with the common prosperity, this thing in inverted commas, this role of common prosperity that the president's been talking about very recently in China. How does it fit in? It should be allowed to be reacted upon by market forces. If it can't pay its debts, then it deserves to go into managed decline or collapse, and will probably change its shape. So that's my feeling, that that what we're seeing is this kind of managed decline. That's my view right now. I mean, but I absolutely take on board everything you've said. I think we're looking at a company that it has got blown up far beyond its own ability.
All right. Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about is this company, TMTG, Trump Media and Technology Group, that is planning to come together with a shell company, a blank check company, the Digital Acquisition Technology Acquisition Corporation. And, you'll recall that the Securities and Exchange Commission and also the Financial Industry Regulatory Agency in the United States going after this Trump proposed merger. And the announcement, earlier that unidentified investors have been able to put together $1 billion, and that Truth Social, which is the social media platform that Trump is proposing, already has, a book value of about $4 billion. So this, scrutiny of this latest effort by the Trump group, do you think it's politics, considering the fact that it was Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren who called the watchdogs to please take a critical look at this latest effort by Trump? Or you think that this is part of the attempt to sanitize the operations of SPACs within the market in the United States?
I think you raised two good points. I think, first of all, yes, of course it's politics, because that's how things work in the United States. As far as SPACs are concerned, I think they've gone beyond their time. I mean, they will resurrect themselves and they'll be called something else. But there's nothing new about putting a lot of people putting money together in a fund to buy something. I mean, that's what a SPAC basically is. I think that the SEC, as you quite rightly put it, are attempting to sanitize this. And you know, what it does show, though, of course, is that President Trump, of course, he is still called President Trump because he was president of the United States, has not gone away and is sitting on the sidelines, ready to enter the fray again. I mean, that seems to be what it shows. So yes, I think it certainly is politics, and the SEC has got its hands full. It's looking at tech companies. All tech companies. It's looking at overseas investment into the United States, particularly from China. And now it's got this. I mean, it's got a lot of work to do. But that's the way things run in the United States. So yes, it is politics. Of course it is.
All right, real quickly, let's talk about Germany. Olaf Scholz is coming in very soon. Two plans the coalition have. Number one, they want to bring about the biggest infrastructural development in Germany in recent times. And at the same time, they have to balance that out with debts. The Germans have a long history with inflation and debt. In fact, the same word for debt in German, I hear, is the same word for sin. So for the Germans, it's a cultural thing to manage debts. How is he going to balance that out? And secondly, the science, what we know currently, is saying that the Omicron is not, doesn't bring very severe and terrible symptoms. What we know currently. But why is it that Bank of England is still dilly-dallying on making a decision based on Omicron? Why is it that the Bank of England is not taking a definitive stand yet on the British economy? Because the labor numbers, like the FC reported yesterday, is beginning to show up the inflation potentials in the economy. And this is rising.
The Bank of England will make its decision on December the 19th, as I understand it. So we'll wait to see what they say there. I can't really speak for the Bank of England. We've raised the inflation problems that it's facing on a regular basis on this programme. What it said yesterday was it's beginning to think, or rather was it yesterday or Friday, I can't remember which, saying that they're going to look at the labour market because that will show whether Omicron is actually, as you noted yourselves earlier on the programme, there are quite a few cases in this country, and certainly there may be further lockdowns. Politicians, whatever you think about them, and they don't have a very they're not very well regarded in this country because of what they've done with this knee-jerk reaction, which I think is being echoed. The reaction to the knee-jerk reaction is being echoed around the world, not least in your country as well. And they're looking at the jobs figures. What they don't want to do is to raise interest. It sends all the wrong signals if an economy is not doing very well. To add to your point about inflation, again, I think the jury's still out as to whether it's transitory or whether it's actually underlying. I mean, I'm not an economist, but that's what the markets are telling us right now. As far as Germany is concerned, they've got a bit of a job on there, haven't they? It'd be very interesting to see what Germany's influence on the EU's relationship with Russia and China will be, because Germany is going to go green. There's no question about that. It's still pivotal as far as gas supplies into Europe are concerned, and that's going to be really important as well. That will be very, very difficult for them to handle, I would imagine. But what I did bring to your attention last week was the fact that it looks like the new finance minister, the ex-party member who went to work for the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, is now back in the party, will have quite a bit of influence, I think, on what the ECB will be doing as it looks forward to its own inflationary problems. So that's where Germany stands right now. You're absolutely right. They fear debt, they fear inflation like nothing else, because it took them so long to get out of it and perform their economic miracle after the Second World War.
Well, Michael, I thought you were going to comment on Ben Broadbent. That's the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England. He was saying only yesterday that, yes, at the end of October, we had inflation going up to about 4.2%, but that Britain should prepare for a very high cost of living, and that inflation is likely to go up comfortably above 5% by next spring 2022. And he linked that to Ofgem, removing the cap on energy bills. Do you think it's just? Do you think it's right? Because oftentimes these Bank of England guys, they say one thing this month, they say another thing next month.
They do, and I think what's happening as far as inflation is, again, the jury's still out on whether it's transitory, but actual family costs are rising higher than the rate of inflation simply because of the proportion of money that is spent in average households on things like energy and travel, which are going hugely. The rate of inflation there is around about 9%. So that I hope that's what he's getting at. In other words, the headline rate will. I don't believe comfortably. I mean, he can say those kind of things. I think that adds to his sort of position of being an observer rather than getting to the truth of it. But I think that what we still don't know is whether this is a spike or whether this is running underneath. I think it's running underneath. I think that the employers having to pay above rates to get workers for whatever reason that is, also because of supply chain problems and because of general prices going up. I mean, I'm hearing now that completely contrary to what I was thinking over the weekend and what I reported on Friday, that Black Friday was actually quite a success because people were buying early because they're worried about the shelves being empty at Christmas. What could be more inflationary than that? I thought that what people would do, what I certainly was going to do, probably still will actually, is to hang on, let all the retailers get their prices in order, get their stocks in order, and then go shopping just before Christmas if that's what I'm planning to do. I mean, that seems to me much more sensible way. So I think what Broadbent's actually addressing is rather clumsily, I have to say, is whether or not this is transitory or spiking. I believe it. I believe it is underlying and gradually rising, and they will have to deal with that. But we'll see what their decision is on December the 16th.
Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Wilson.